If you've ever thought of quilting your own projects but just don't know where to start, I have the perfect first steps for you. I've put together a PDF guide. I call it 3 Steps Toward Freehand Freedom. These are the baby steps, but they can help you move past your overwhelm and show you that yes, indeed, freehand quilting can be learned. So if you'd like to snag this PDF, there's a link in the show notes, or if you're an Instagram user, just message me 3 steps. That's the number 3 STEPS, and I'll send you that link. Let today be the day you get started.
I made 1,652. Yes. Because I kept track because I had to cut back a little bit because I only put 10 out a day.
Welcome to Measure Twice, Cut Once, the podcast where we hear quilters and other crafters' stories and draw encouragement and even life lessons from them. I'm your host, Susan Smith, coming to you from my quilting studio, Stitched by Susan. This is where my long arm Lucy and I spend lots of hours doing freehand, edge-to-edge quilting. If you're not a quilter and those terms mean nothing to you, it's basically doodling on the layers of a quilt top with a 50-pound pencil, with needle and thread attached, and at really high speed. My philosophy is there's nothing as warm and comforting as a handmade quilt, and my mission is to get as many out in the world as possible. So I quilt for people, and I teach others to find freedom and joy in quilting for themselves. There are so many quilt makers and just as many stories. Quilting has been a bridge between generations, it has soothed loneliness and chronic pain, and it's been a beautiful expression of art and creativity that spans countries and cultures. Today's Pins and Needles is brought to you by The Will and Dave Show.
Hi, I'm the Will half of The Will and Dave Show, a short little podcast that myself and the eponymous Dave like to record talking about the things that really matter to us, whether that's social, political, or pop culture. Usually we don't see eye to eye, but more often than not, we can find some common ground in there somewhere. And now, back to Pins and Needles with a quick tip for all you sharp quilters out there.
Today's tip is a small one for when you're working in very tight quarters. So when you're working in the presser foot area of your sewing machine, and perhaps you want to take the throat plate off so that you can clear out the lint from underneath or in the bobbin casing or something like that, it can often be very awkward to fit a whole screwdriver in there. Even a small screwdriver can be difficult to fit in that small area. What works really well, no pun intended, for these tight quarters is to use a quarter, a coin. And if the slot of your screw is very slim, maybe you'll have to downsize that to a dime. But that coin can be really helpful to use just as though it were a screwdriver to loosen and then again to retighten those screws. You all know I love my coffee. And if you're interested in supporting this podcast, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Stitched by Susan, where for the price of one delicious coffee, you're able to make a one-time contribution. This helps me keep batteries in stock for my microphone and enables me to keep bringing you these weekly episodes. Thanks so much for your support, and maybe take a moment now to refill your cup as you settle back to enjoy today's interview. Barb Edwards is going to be joining me today. Now, Barb is a crafter from way back, not necessarily or not only a quilter. She's done many crafts and she'll tell us about some of them. But she particularly has a story to tell today about a mask quilt, so you won't want to miss that. So today I'm welcoming Barb Edwards into my studio. Now, Barb is the mom of one of my good friends, and I first heard about a project that she had making masks. So we'll come around to that in a minute, but for now, I'll let Barb just introduce herself and maybe tell us a few sentences about what you like doing craft-wise.
Oh my. Well, I'm Barbara Edwards, and I do just about any crafts. I like doing the woodworking and sewing and just anything new I like to try.
So you're always trying a new craft. Now, when you say woodworking,
Yes.
Do you mean like toll painting kind of woodworking, or actually building things out of wood, constructing
No,
things?
building things. Bookcases, shelvings, whatever anybody wants. Potting tables,
How
just about
fun.
anything.
Well, that's a broad range. And that was going to be one of
Yes.
my questions, and you've preempted it, whether you do other crafts as well. So you like exploring new crafts? How
I
fun.
do. Except I can't oil paint or anything like that. I don't have that talent.
Well, sounds like you have many talents, though. So I first, well, I've met you, of course, along with my friend Joni, who's your daughter.
Yes.
But I first learned that you were a quilter when I heard about you making masks early on in the pandemic. You were making masks for people. What kind of got you started in that? Was it just the general need?
I started out making for family, made for
Okay.
Joni and her family, and then my nephew and his family wanted some. And then I just thought, well, maybe other people might need them. So I put a tub out at the driveway, and I made about 10 masks, put them out there, and the next morning they were all gone. So I made more and just kept on until I made a bunch.
Do you have any idea how many you actually made overall?
I made 1,652.
You have a specific idea. That's fantastic.
Yes, because I kept track because had to cut back a little bit because I could only put 10 out a day there for a while.
That's
And
a
they
lot.
would go. Yeah, and they would go.
So I'm curious, did you kind of use the honor system? Did you give them all away? Did you ask for payment? Did people start paying you in fabric or contributions like that?
Oh my, yes. Let's see. It started out where I just said free mass, take if you need it. And then in about a week, I started getting material. I started getting sandwich bags that I put them in. And some people left money. And then a lot left awfully nice cards. And
That's
just
wonderful.
thanking me. Yeah.
It seems like whenever there is, disaster strikes in some way, that's what causes people to pull together. And I love that you saw that, taking shape, that people wanted to chip in some way.
Yes, yes. So it was fun to do. And then I got to where I was starting to have back problems, so I had to quit that. I hated to quit because they were kind of still going, not as many towards the end, but I had to quit. So that's what I did.
That is a remarkable number of masks. So the part of it that came my way is for the different fabrics that you used, you began putting the pieces into a quilt. Was it leftover scraps, or did you have that
Yes.
idea from the beginning?
No, it was kind of leftover scraps. And then I thought, gosh, what can I do? Because they were the 3-inch size strips. And I thought, well, what can I do with them? And so I just started going around and I don't know if it's called the log cabin or whatever, that's where you sew a strip and then a strip on the other side. And I just kept going and until I got kind of the size I wanted. But I still have a lot more material.
So more quilts coming my way. So that first
Yes.
mask quilt that you made, I have now quilted on my long arm. And in fact, it's in progress because you haven't even seen it quilted yet, but I can tell you
No,
it's
I
finished.
haven't.
So hopefully
And
there'll
that
be
blue quilt, you can do what you want with it. Just make it pretty.
good to know. So when you made that, and I noticed, and it was of course fun when I was quilting it, is you have all kinds of fabrics, and that would kind of make sense if people were contributing, right? What are some of the most unique ones that people dropped off for you? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Somebody left some old cotton shirts, and they weren't in good enough shape to use, but I appreciated the thought.
Right. So someone had a generous heart, but of course the
Yes.
person on the receiving end of the mask isn't going to want a used cotton shirt necessarily.
Right, right.
I understand.
If it would have looked new or something after I washed it, I probably would have, used them. But it looked like used material, so I didn't want to use it.
Oh, I know something else that happened that grew out of that mask making project too, and I'm not sure where it was in your 1,650 odd masks, but our local news station Horizon picked up the story, not only of you
Yes.
making masks, but your delivery pickup process too, because it was so unique. Tell us more about that.
Yes. Well, Lindsay, she was here for a weekend, and we made some masks for a friend of hers over at the Seattle area.
Now, let me just
And
interject. Lindsay is your granddaughter, correct?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
got it.
yep.
Go ahead.
And she called the radio or the TV station and told them what I was doing. She thought people should know, I guess. And so the gal says, "Well, I can come out this afternoon and do that." And so Lindsay, she was on her way home, and so Lindsay called and says, "There's going to be a radio, or the TV crew is going to come out and film you." So I made her turn around and come back.
Good for you.
Because I didn't want to do it by myself. So they came, and awfully nice lady, and like you and I are just having a conversation, and she kind of picked and chose the parts that she wanted, and I thought it turned out really, really nice. So
it sure
was
did.
kind of an honor.
I got to see it after it was, when it was being aired. I thought that was really great that they did take the time to honor you for doing that. And that's the kind of special interest stories that they really wanted to promote and to tell people about, because people do want to know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great story.
It was neat.
So you've been doing lots and lots of crafts, which you told us, but sewing in particular, is that something that you grew up doing? Did you learn that from mom, grandma, or something that you picked up on your own?
Oh, I learned it from my grandma on a treadle machine. My first quilt, I wish I still had it, but I don't. But grandma was the one that taught me, and then I took it in school. And when I was first married, Joni and her brother Brian had all homemade clothes. And a lot of hand-me-downs that was too big, I would cut out clothes that would fit them. And I sewed all our clothes, basically, to start with. Yeah.
I'm kind of from that vintage myself, and it seems like a generation ago, it was more economical, I feel like, to sew clothes than it is now.
Yep.
And so more moms tended to do that. And it is really quite fun. And gosh, no one else was ever wearing anything just like you, that's for sure.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Totally
now you can go to like the Walmarts and all that, and you can buy clothes so cheap that it's, I don't know, it's kind of sad.
It is in a way, but there's also a movement going on right now, and a kind of a hashtag, when people are posting on social media, and it's me made, and sometimes me made wardrobe or me made clothes. And it's kind of coming full circle to where that's kind of a badge of honor to say, yeah, I made this. I make my own clothes. Isn't that great? And I love that. I love that that's coming back around. So that's huge in it. So what's next? What are you crafting next?
Well, right now, my good friend had a gift shop that I helped her with for about 8 years. I haven't done it for about 3-4 years. Has a gift shop in Valley. It's called Bells and Whistles. But she contracted COVID and passed away the 1st of May.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
So I promised her that I would help her sister continue with the gift shop for at least a year. So I'm down there about 4 days a week now. So doing that.
So you're actually working in the gift shop, or you're making things for the gift shop?
Well, the gift shop is new stuff, used stuff, and handcrafted stuff. So we do crafts down there if we've got the time. Otherwise, we're just selling the stuff that we can find at yard sales or people give us. And Dawn was the one that started it, and she started the gift shop. She did the park, put in a basketball court for the kids, and she was all for the community. So we're going to try and carry on her wishes. So that's what I'm doing right now.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
So any more quilts on the horizon? Are you going to continue with your mask scrap theme, or you've got another idea for using up those scraps?
I will probably do another one because both my kids want one. Joni, she said she wanted this one, and Brian says, well, what about me? So I've got enough to do another one. So you'll be quilting another one down the road sometime. And then I try to make a quilt to give, like when the girls, my nieces and that, they get married, they get one of the old quilts that I've had handed down to me that are actually hand quilted, which is a kind of a lost art, I think, now. But then try to give something new.
Do you know, Barb, again, like the making your own clothing hand quilting is coming back around and is becoming really popular again. And there's just this surge of kind of slow stitching is another phrase that you hear quite a bit. This realization again of how beneficial that is for a person to slow down and do some things that take time. And hand quilting certainly qualifies, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I remember my grandma, she had just a huge quilting frame in her front room, and it was just up all the time, and she quilted.
Yeah, my mom too. And in fact, it was one of my brothers was kind of an inventor, I guess. He was always finding unique ways to do things. Anyway, he arranged a pulley system for my mom so that she could raise and lower that huge quilting frame out of the living room.
Oh.
And that was a modern convenience right there. So
yes. Yeah.
Are you a hand quilter too? Is that something you grew up doing?
I've never done it. I often thought I've done counted cross stitch, you know, which is kind of the same, I guess. I don't know, but no, I've never tried it. It just looks hard.
It's not. It does take some practice, you know, as many things do, to get even stitches. But again, nowadays we're seeing more of almost an embellishment done with hand stitching. So maybe with thicker threads or larger stitches, and it just adds that real handmade touch. It is beautiful.
Yes.
It is beautiful. Yes. Well, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but do you have something, a one takeaway that you could leave with our listeners? So whether it's a life lesson that you've learned from crafting, or whether it's a tip or piece of advice you'd like to pass on, or an aha moment that you had, what's just something that you think our listeners could take into their days?
Oh, well, I think the aha moment that I got from it was the response that I got back from people putting the masks out, the notes and the cards, and just the wonderful things that they said to me that made me feel good and wanted to keep going. And I just wish everybody would be nice. It's kind of a lost thing, it seems, right now. If everybody just respect everybody else and appreciate the things that people do, it'd be a lot better place.
Yes. And it does just warm one's heart when you receive and see those messages. And I'm just, my heart is so warmed by the effort that you took to supply masks for those that were in need for various reasons. And so thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Barb. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll do it again sometime.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay.
And thank you for tuning in to the show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcast or the podcast app of your choice. It really helps other listeners to find the show so they can hear these stories too. For information on the classes I offer or quilting services, please see my website, stitchedbysusan.com. And if pictures are your preference, check out my Pinterest galleries of edge-to-edge and custom quilting projects. These direct links can all be found in the show notes below. So until next time, may your sorrows be patched and your joys be quilted.